When a mother or parents make the decision to allow a child to be adopted, there's no playbook on how to act or feel, and the same can be said of the adoptees and the adoptive parents. When author Lorri Antosz Benson reunited with the daughter she'd had 16 years before, she was also embraced by Katie's entire adoptive family. But the road is seldom completely smooth. In her second book, Adopting Hope, Lorri asked for and got advice on adoption from families all over the country, what works, what doesn't, from all three sides to this very important family matter. Such a big topic. And first of all, just tell me a little bit more about your own story with this.
Well, it happened. I was a producer with Phil Donahue, and
congratulations, you guys were trailblazers.
Thank you. Yes, he's brilliant. And I ended up pregnant, and I ended up choosing to place her for adoption, which was, you know, heartbreaking and of course horrible. And but we ended up, she found me 16 years later, and our whole families just started to blend together, and until we were all really just family. And we do a lot of stuff together.
Did you think always that she might turn up?
I prayed and hoped that she would. I didn't know. It was a closed adoption, so there was no guarantees of anything. I know that I had written a letter to her mother and said, I will never be the one to initiate and interfere in your lives, but I am here and open and ready if she wants to find me.
Which is so interesting. Yeah. These stories don't always turn out that way, and there are complicating factors. I love the fact that you talk about this from all the different perspectives, because it isn't just one person this is happening to, not even just the adoptee.
Right.
It's everybody and then their families.
Exactly. And it can be very complicated. It can be beautiful. It can be complex. Sometimes things don't work out the way you want them to. And I thought that was important to include in the book, stories that maybe didn't have, you know, the Pollyanna happy ending. Because sometimes
I'm glad you did that, because we've seen some of the really happy stories on TV, and then when something else happens to people, they think, well, what is wrong with me? And it can actually complicate all the issues that were already there.
You know, actually, I felt the opposite, that there were a lot of negative images out there and a lot of stories, and the axe murderer birth child comes back, you know, in these Lifetime movies. And so I wanted to have a positive impression out there about adoption. But you're right, it was really important. You learn so much from stories that sometimes don't go perfectly.
Right. So why did you want to write this particular book? What do you want us to take from this?
Well, I wanted to have it be seen from all the three perspectives, and I wanted them to share what worked in their situation, what didn't work, because people feel alone, especially people who are waiting to adopt. They feel like nobody understands what this is like, and it really helps. And birth parents, you feel very alone when you're a birth parent. And adoptees, the same thing. They are, you know, should I search? I don't, you know, who do I go to ask what's the best progress for me to make?
Right, and you risk hearing all the things that really shouldn't be said to you when you open up. So there is that extra loneliness. So as you put this together, did you learn some lessons? Were there some common themes of how to approach some of these
There actually
issues?
were, oh yes, very much so. One of my biggest takeaways was tell the child, if you're the adoptive parent, when you are rocking the baby in the cradle, you tell the child their narrative, their story, who they are. This isn't something that you wait for the right time. You make it part of who they are. That was a big one. And the other was that everyone needs to act out of love if you want to have a successful story. You have to be putting fear aside. You have to be putting your own expectations aside. You just need to act from a place of love.
So when you think of a successful adoption story, what do you think is success?
I think successful is when nobody is suffering, struggling, you know, not happy. A successful story, I think, is when everyone feels like their needs have been met.
It may not be perfect, but that we have done the best we could for everyone.
Exactly. I mean, I love our story. I mean, we're taking Katie and her husband on a trip next year with our whole family.
That's so awesome.
You know, I mean, we just do everything together. That's our story. For somebody else, yep, that's Katie when she was born. And for somebody else, a successful story might be that you just met and exchanged information for medical reasons. Everybody's different.
Depending on what you want, what you're open to, what your
Exactly.
family situation is. So now, of course, with DNA, and nearly everybody doing this at some time or another, people are finding relatives they didn't know they had, or
Right.
family, secrets or histories that might not have been shared
Exactly.
are unfolding. What advice can you give us about how to navigate that path?
So this kind of exploded after I had turned the manuscript into the publisher, but a lot of the same lessons can be taken from this book in those situations. I think, again, you have to tread slowly, carefully. Don't just jump in. You don't go in with expectations. Again, act out of love. I think there's a lot of similar themes. And when you get a surprise that there's somebody out there, there's a lot of excitement. But you need to be careful, and you don't know what you're going to find at the other end. So tread carefully.
Tread carefully. Thank you so much. I'm glad you're continuing to write about this. And, I feel like this is always an issue with friends of mine, and that we still need to have a lot of learning and sharing and kindness
Absolutely.
around the things that arise from
Absolutely. Adoption is a great topic, but it's complicated. It definitely is. And if I can just do a shout out, you all got me several of my contributors.
Oh, good.
Because I announced on the show a couple years ago, and I got some great stories from you.
Glad to hear it. Thank
Yep.
you so much. We appreciate it. Next up, when we come back, a weight plan doctors say can be customized to a patient's specific needs. We'll talk about that right after this break.